Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Kayla and I'm so excited for you to meet Elizabeth. Today we're going to be talking about faith and how it's affecting her life journey. I just love how transparent she is and I think you will too. Go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss an episode in this Nurturing Faith series. Okay, let's hop into the video. Hi Elizabeth, how are you?
Good, doing good. How are you?
Good. So we're going to get started. I want you to just introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Elizabeth. I am married. I have a Labradoodle dog who's right here, but you can't really see him. Yeah, so I don't really know what else to say about myself. Yes. My life is my husband and my dog.
Yes, and you have a YouTube channel, so go ahead and shout yourself out.
Yes. My YouTube channel is Lizabawa, Lizabawa. And I just talk about finances. I think I'm going to start doing just vlogs about my daily life, if there's anything exciting. Mm-hmm. I just kind of shared my thrift hauls because I love to thrift. Nice. I just kind of talk about whatever I feel like talking about. So It ranges.
I love it. Okay, so why is faith important to your journey?
Faith is important to me. So actually, I didn't really make my faith my own until I was in college. Yeah. I grew up going to church, but I mean, there was a point too where I was just like, I don't even believe in God. And so that was like a middle school to high school kind of phase. Yeah. And then towards the end of high school, I was like, okay, like I believe in God, but it was more so just like, I guess kind of a lukewarmness. Yeah. Superficial kind of thing. It wasn't really till later college actually, my junior and senior year, that I really made my faith my own. And that was through a lot of different things that happened in my life, from my relationship to finding a really solid church community. So honestly, I think once my faith, I made it my own and I understood like why I believe in God and I understood the message of the gospel. Yeah. Honestly, it became everything to me. I always struggled with depression growing up. I struggled with a lot of just self-doubt, a lot of insecurities. And I think really becoming comfortable in who I am as a daughter of God really shaped who I am. I think back a lot to like who I was before that. And I was really insecure, really jealous of like other people and their lives and just depressed and angry all the time. So complete 160. So faith is really important to me.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay. Besides Jesus, because he provides the perfect example of how to nurture faith, is there anyone else you look up to when it comes to nurturing your faith?
This one was hard. This question was hard for me because I feel like I've always struggled when it comes to being in community and feeling connected to other believers. But when I really think back on my life, my mom actually every night, like I would see her pray, and every week, like she would always get me, my sibling, and my dad. She would always get us together to pray and to read the Bible. And I remember, like, I used to hate doing that because as a kid, you're like, oh, like I just want to like go do other things. Like, why are we doing this? Yeah. And make us pray, so we're like awkwardly like, God, I don't know what to say,
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know, thinking back on that now, and I am married, so eventually kids are in the future for me, in the plan for me. I think about like how I would want to be for my kids, and I think that if I can be what my mom was to me, if I could be that to my kids, I feel like that would have paved the way to helping them become stronger in their faith as well. But even to this day, I think about how faithful she was in her prayer life, and even getting our family together to do like devotionals.
That's awesome. And you mentioned you struggle with community. That's something that I struggled with as well. So I was a military brat growing up. So I got really good at having these like surface level relationships because I knew like in a year or two I'd be gone. So, so that's something new for me as well. Over the last, I would say 3 years or so, like I've been learning like what community means and how, it's helpful to have community, especially godly community. So I completely understand that. But that's awesome. I know that you'll do that to your kids. That's going to be awesome. God works miracles and wonders every day. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of them all, but which personal faith story will forever be memorable?
Yeah, so I don't think it was for me something like a miracle that happened in my life or anything, but I think it was more so the process or and the journey of how I really came to make my faith my own, I guess.
Yeah.
I remember like junior year of college when I first started attending a church, because up to then I hadn't really been like faithfully going every Sunday to church. But yeah, I finally started going to a church, and I just remember encountering like all these like other girls my age who were like so passionate about Jesus and like so like supportive of each other. And up to that point, like my relation, like my, I guess like friendships with other girls is very competitive and just like negative experiences with other women. So just to see like women just being so supportive and loving towards each other, and to see like how they would talk about God and Jesus as if God was like their close friend, and they were just so excited about their faith. And I just remember thinking like, I don't have that, you know, and like I wish I did, you know. And so I remember there was a worship night at that church one night, and they played the song "I Surrender" by Hillsong United, which is such an old song.
And I love Hillsong though.
Yeah, it's a good song. And I just remember thinking like, man, God, like I've never had to surrender anything in my life, you know, and I just remember asking like, oh, can you like, I don't know, like bring something into my life to, or at least show me what I need to surrender in my life to you, you know, because I feel like up to that point, I've lived a pretty privileged life, I guess, you know, like didn't really have many challenges. But yeah, so a couple months later, I actually got into a relationship with a guy, and I guess he called himself a Christian, but didn't really go to church, didn't really live that lifestyle. Like he liked to party and drink and cuss all the time, which, you know, if you like to drink and party, like nothing wrong, nothing against that, you know. You do, you know. But yeah, he was really immersed in that lifestyle, and like he even questioned if he was a Christian too. And I remember early on in our relationship, I asked him, so do you consider yourself a Christian? You know, and he even told me like, I don't know actually. So, you know, we were both in the same boat, I guess. And so we dated for a while, and we did fall into some sin in our relationship together. And I'm always really transparent. So like we did sleep together in that relationship, you know? So, and I'm going to be honest about that. So I remember at that time, like, again, that was the time where I was starting to build these friendships with other women, really strong women of God, and just being more involved in church. And, you know, after asking that question of like, God, what do I have to surrender to you? Because I don't know, you know? And then entering a relationship like that, and then starting to grow in my faith, and starting to have more convictions about the things that I was doing in my life. And then at that point, like I started to question, like, you know, maybe I need to lay this relationship down, because he kind of became an idol to me. And I think too, like growing up in the Christian church and being told all the time that, like, you know, having sex before marriage is a sin, you know, and it kind of like you struggle with feeling like, okay, am I like unworthy now? Like, am I, you know, if I don't end up with this guy, then am I like staying tainted, you know? So, you know, I had a lot of those struggles too. But I got to a point where I realized, like, I really want to know who God is more. I want to know who God is more than like my reputation in the church, I guess, and
so
to other believers. And so I eventually broke up with him, and that was probably to this day one of the hardest things I ever had to do. But it was worth it, because honestly, after that, like my faith, my relationship with God just skyrocketed. I made so many awesome girlfriends through that experience, and I stepped into leadership positions, and like I just gained so much more confidence in like who I am as a daughter of God, who I am as a person, as a woman. So I think like to me, I guess a memorable faith story. It wasn't really like something miraculous that happened, but just
that is miraculous. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I don't know. I always go back to that, because I think that was a really pivotal point in my life, is learning how to surrender the things that I want, and then seeing God's faithfulness through that, and not in the way that I even expected it to look like, you know?
It doesn't always happen like that. It's like It's not how we expect it to, but God, I mean, what he does is so much better than what we could have come up with. So that's awesome. So surrendering is the key.
Yes, absolutely. And trusting God in that process.
Faith can require some level of obedience to God. When God is calling you to step out in faith, but fear arises, how do you combat that?
Yeah, so I always have a story to everything.
I love it though.
One story after this instance is when I was graduating college, I mean, like, my community that I had in college, like in the church I was going to, the friendships that I made there, like, it was so awesome. And I was in like this kind of safe bubble, I guess. Yeah. And my plan, not God's plan, but my plan was like, after I graduate college, like, I think I'm going to stay here. I want to serve the college students. I want to like serve this church. I want to serve this area. Yeah. But I remember like every time I would go back home, because I lived about 4 hours away from where I went to college. But every time I would go back home, I would just see, I guess, like how dead the church was in that area. Yeah. And I just felt like there was such a strong need for revival in my hometown. Yeah. And like, if you know me and my story of like how I grew up, like I hated the church I grew up in. I hated, I actually grew up in a Hmong church. Hmong is like a people group, kind of like Japanese or Chinese or Korean. It's like a race, a people group, an ethnic group. So I grew up in a purely Hmong church. And to me, what I saw, there was a lot of cultural influences into the way that the church was structured. Yeah. So it just kind of left a really sour taste in my mouth of the church back home and the people that went to that church. Yeah, yeah. So I just remember thinking like, that is the last place after I graduate that I want to go back to. Yeah. And you know how God is. Yes. So every time I'd go home on breaks, I just like my heart would break for the area, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, like I wish that they could have what I have. And so towards like my last few months of being at college, I realized that God was calling me to go back home and to just serve that area and be faithful in that area for a while. And I've been there ever since. But definitely I took a leap of faith. And there was a lot of fear, I think. And I mean, I'll be honest, even to this day, like finding community has been hard here. And there's been a lot of times where I wonder, like, has my time here, has my reason to be here, has it been fulfilled already, God? And honestly, I don't know. I still don't know why I'm here and what my purpose is. But I think in the midst of all that, I have to remember that God's timeline isn't mine. Yeah. Like, he could have worked my first year being back home. Or he could work in 10 years. I don't know. But I think like when we are fearful in those kind of situations, we have to remember that one, God is outside of time and space that we can reason. Yeah. So who knows how long, like 1 hour isn't the same as like a month to him, or could be the same as like a month to him, because he's outside of time and space. So just realizing that he is like, the way his timeline of how he works on, like, I guess like his plan, it's so much bigger than us. And I guess that's another aspect to it, is realizing like God's story isn't just about me, I'm just like such a small part of it all. So realizing that we just have to continue to be faithful where he's placed us, even when we can't see and understand what his plan is. But remembering that there is a bigger picture to everything. So when I'm fearful of like my purpose and God's plan for my life, that's kind of what I remind myself of.
And I just have to ask, have you seen revival since you've been back at your home church?
I've actually gone to a couple of churches since I've been back. It's been about 4 years. Okay. But the church I'm at now, I've been here for the last 3 years. Okay. And as far as like revival in the area, I definitely like see people starting to become more bold, I guess. Ooh. Or especially in like the Hmong community here, I definitely see the young people here start to step out in faith more. Yeah. And it's not even necessarily in the town, but like in the surrounding areas. And then in terms of the church I'm at now, I definitely see people are, I think there's definitely a sense of God stirring amongst the midst of the congregation.
Yeah.
And
nice.
I mean, honestly, I don't even know what to expect. Like I said, I'm still like, what am I doing here, God? I don't know. Like, am I still meant to be here? I don't know. But I think just seeing like God working in the church I'm at right now, and seeing the hunger that people have, like, because I serve on the worship team as well, and I've definitely seen like how from like 3 years ago to now, like the church culture has changed a lot, and I feel like people are hungering for God more. So I definitely, and you know, like all like we have prayer nights at my church too, and just hearing my pastor talk about like how he feels like there's a shift coming as well, and I don't know, I feel like it's happening, and again, not necessarily on my time, like it might be 3 years from now before we see anything happen, anything happen, you know? But yeah, I definitely feel like a stirring within my church congregation, and definitely in the area too.
So you just expect it. You're like, God, whatever you do, whenever you do it, I'm ready. Yeah.
Whenever. Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, we just need to be ready. And I, you know, like, I honestly, like, I haven't always been like the best steward of that either. The best steward of my purpose. Like, I definitely have a lot of moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I just want to move back to like my college town, or like, I just want to move somewhere different, you know?
Yeah.
But
I understand.
Like, yeah, you just gotta stay steady.
Yeah, literally. In this faith journey, it's not strange to experience moments of doubt. So doubt in an outcome, doubt in ourselves, even doubt in God's plans for us. How can nurturing your faith and cultivating an attitude of gratitude be healthy and helpful in these tough moments?
I have another story for that. Love it. So my mom actually, my parents, they actually got divorced recently. And my mom, she has early onset dementia. So we've been dealing with that for the last few years. And with her and my dad just this year getting divorced, it was like a whole thing, all that blew up. And I remember talking to a mentor, and we were talking about like if my mom came to stay with me for a little while, or even maybe permanently, and like that wrecked me, because like it's like, if you know how dementia is, the condition, like it's a really hard condition to, if you have a family member that has it, it's very hard to deal with them. It's very hard to navigate like conversations with them, because they get irritable, they get angry. And I just remember, and even now, I act like it's a long time ago. It was literally this year. But yeah, even now, like I have a really hard time thinking positively about the situation. And so when I was talking to my mentor, and she like, you know, what's some positives that you can see in your mom potentially living with you, you becoming her primary caretaker, you know? And I just remember telling her, like, I can't think of one thing. Honestly, I can't think of one positive thing. And I told her all my fears about it, and they were all just like negative stuff. And then she like listed all these positive things to me. And then I realized, like, honestly, and like in everything in my whole life, like I've always struggled with thinking positively and having gratitude in hard situations. And yeah, that's something that honestly I'm still working on, and that's okay, you know.
That is absolutely okay.
I think knowing how to have gratitude and looking at things positively is important. I think that's something that I've learned and realized in this situation. Knowing that I am someone who thinks really negatively about things. I like to say, oh, I'm thinking realistically, but really I'm thinking negative, you know. So yeah, through talking with my mentor, I realized like we need to think of the things that we are thankful for. We need to show a little more gratitude in our lives, you know, because there are things, you know, whether it's like my dog or like my husband, you know, like you can find things to be grateful for, you know, even if it's not like having people in your life. Maybe just be grateful that today was sunny or something. But honestly, just having gratitude can change your outlook on a situation dramatically.
So again, I'm sorry to hear about that. So when tough moments happen though, like what pushes you to cling to God? You know, what pushes you towards him instead of saying, you know, God, why did this happen? Just being upset and like kind of wallowing in that. Because I feel like a lot of people do that. I've done that, you know? So what's helped you?
Honestly, in all my toughest moments, I've only found peace in God. Like, not in my dog, not in my husband, not in my friendships.
Wow.
I mean, even the situation with my parents' divorce and my mom's dementia, I just remember one night, like, I couldn't sleep because, like, all these, like, thoughts were just going around in my head, and I was just so angry, and I was, like, just, like, everything just hurt, you know? You know, like feeling you have in your heart where, like, the situation, it just hurts your heart. Like, physically, you feel it in your heart, in your body. Like, I'm hurting, you know? And, you know, my husband, he was asleep. It was like 2 a.m, you know? I could have woken him up and been like, hey, honey, like, can I talk to you about this? But I guess that's something about me also. I don't like to talk about my problems with people. So I turn to God naturally, you know?
I love that.
So it was like 2 a.m, and I had been thinking about everything, all these things up until 2 a.m. And I just got out of bed and I went in the living room. I turned on some worship music. I opened my Bible and I just cried. I just cried and said, God, like, this is how I'm feeling. Like, I know God already knows the things I'm thinking and feeling, but honestly, just venting to God and being like, this is the situation. This is how I'm feeling right now. I'm overwhelmed. I'm, like, so heartbroken over all this. And I don't know what else to do but just cry. So I just cried and cried and prayed for my family, you know? And I think that's, in those moments, that's all you can do. But just
because I know people, like, go through tough times, and that might not be their first response, like, turn to God, you know? They might turn to their friends, they might turn to alcohol, they might turn to sex, you know, whatever they're you know. So that's awesome though. You turned to him, you cried out to him.
Any hard times I've ever had, like, after my breakup, where the relationship that I surrendered, like, any time that I've really just sat down and been still before God and just, like, talked to him like a friend, like, moments after that, like, just so much peace, you know? And I think we all just need to remember, just literally just cry out to God and, like, talk to God like he's your mom or your dad, your mom. Talk to him like a father. Talk to him like a father, like a friend, you know? And he already knows what you're going through, but he just wants to hear it, you know? So honestly, when you feel like you don't have a friend or you don't know what to do, just, there is literally peace in the presence
like
of God,
real peace, you know, not like a temporary, like, real lasting peace, you know? So that's awesome. And then the last question, how do you practically nurture your faith?
So, man, like, when I was thinking about this, I thought about this a lot today, actually. I was like, honestly, like, I don't feel like I'm the most qualified to answer this question because, like, in all transparency, like, I haven't been reading my Bible as much the last few years, and I haven't been praying as much the last few years, you know, and I just thought all day, like, what is my answer to this? Like, I don't know, because, like, I don't want to be fake and be like, oh yeah, so just read your Bible and pray, you know, which I thought about doing that for a second. Then I was like, hold up, let's just be authentic here and say, like, you know, in the business of life, and sorry, I don't know if I said it clearly, in the busyness of life and in my laziness, like, I just have not been reading my Bible and praying. So, like, practically, like, how do I nurture my faith, you know? But in this season, I think what's been really helpful for me is just being intentional with relationships with other believers, being intentional in community, even if community has been hard, just continuing to be intentional in building those friendships and relationships. Like, I've been going to, like, a study group, like a co-ed study group with me and my husband. And that's been really good because it's been challenging me in my faith and challenging me in, like, are you reading your word, you know? And I think, like, a very practical thing, if you're having a hard time reading your Bible on your own and praying, like, is surrounding yourself with people who do that. You know, surrounding yourself with really strong women of God that you can talk to if you have questions about theology, if you have questions about something you're reading in the Bible, questions about, like, something political, I don't know. But literally just finding those people in your life that you can go to encourage you, to give you feedback on, like, your thought processes when you're reading the Bible or any questions you have, finding people you can bounce ideas off of, you know. And I think that's something that practically that I've been doing recently that's been really helpful in my faith. And also, like, for me personally, I like, honestly, anytime I listen to worship music, it just puts me in the mood instantly.
Yeah.
So that is something else practically that I feel like anyone can do. If you can't like sing or anything, just put on some worship music, you know? And I think that gets you in the mood instantly. But in terms of when I think too of like the past, when I was reading my word daily and I was like praying all the time for like hours, when I had all those hours in college to do that, I remember like the catalyst for me even doing that was literally just the discipline of sitting myself down and just starting to read my Bible.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't because I wanted to do it or that I desired to do it. Like, I literally just made myself sit down with a cup of tea and I just started reading. And I remember from there, like, just a hunger for God just began to build and build and build, you know?
Yeah.
So like sometimes we think that like we have to have this desire to read the Bible, but honestly, it's just discipline.
Yeah.
Like, you're just being lazy if you're not reading it, because once you start reading it, once you start praying, like even to this day, like, because like I said, I haven't been reading and praying, but like the times that I do start praying, the times that I do start reading my Bible and just putting that discipline in, like immediately it's like this hunger inside of me just comes out, you know, and then I'm like, I gotta pray, like I gotta keep praying, gotta keep digging, you know, in my prayer closet. So
good.
Yeah, practically, like, you just gotta do it, you know? Like, stop being lazy and just like open your Bible, like just start praying for people, and like I don't know what happens, but when you start doing that, I think the Holy Spirit moves.
Yes.
And we literally have to put in the effort first. We can't just expect that we're gonna have this hunger for God if we don't even open our Bibles. So like I'm preaching to myself right now.
No, I love that. I love that. And I appreciate you being honest and you being transparent. Thank you so much for sharing your heart, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you for having me.